Hi everyone! I'm going to be sharing how I made 5 easy Halloween decorations. And for this first Halloween DIY, I thought this flower pot would be great for a ghost, so I painted the sides of it white so I wouldn't see the brown through the fabric I'll be putting over it. Now once the paint was dry, I glued on a piece of white fabric on the bottom of the flower pot, and I also cut off some of the excess fabric. When I was done with the fabric, I wanted to make a hat for the ghost, so I cut a full circle and a half of a circle out of felt. Next, I glued the half circle into a cone shape and glued the cone onto the middle of the full circle. I also glued on a piece of orange and black twine along the edge of the cone, and to finish the hat, I glued on a bow. If you don't have any twine, you can use whatever you would like. The next thing I did was that I cut some eyes out of felt and then I glued them on. I also glued the fabric down on the flower pot so the eyes won't move in the next step. When I was done with the eyes, I pulled off a stick that was on a pumpkin pick so I could glue it onto the fabric to make it look like the ghost was holding it. Now to finish the ghost, I glued on the hat. I love how this ghost turned out and I think it turned out looking really cute. For this next DIY, I painted a small wooden crate black, and when the paint was dry, I flicked the bristles of a paintbrush with watered down paint towards the inside to create stars. Next, I made a moon with a paint marker, but if you don't have a paint marker, you can use a paintbrush and paint. Now once everything was dry, I glued some moss on the part of the crate I wanted the bottom to be. Then I glued down some pumpkins on the top of the moss, and I also glued a skeleton from a garland on one of the pumpkins. Now to finish this, I glued on a spider on the top of the crate, and I added some more pumpkins. I really like how this came out, and I also like how anything can be used to create any Halloween scene. Now for this third DIY, I painted 2 pumpkin ornaments and a wooden dowel. I painted one pumpkin orange, and the wooden dowel and the other pumpkin black. Once the paint was dry, I painted a face on the orange pumpkin, and I also took a darker orange to make the pumpkin not look flat. Now when the pumpkin was dry, I glued the wooden dowel onto the middle of the black pumpkin, and I also glued the orange pumpkin on the wooden dowel. Next, I glued some black roses, leaves, and these twigs that came with the roses on the black pumpkin. The last thing I did was that I glued on a piece of twine onto the orange pumpkin to hide the hole of the ornament, and then I was done. I love how this DIY turned out, and I really like how cute the orange pumpkin turned out. For this fourth DIY, I took a clip off this flower and glued it onto the top of a black foam pumpkin. If you can't find a black foam pumpkin, you can just use an orange one and paint it black. The next thing I did was that I took some orange berry picks and pushed them into the pumpkin. That's how I made this flower pumpkin. I love how pretty it looks, and I like how simple it was to make it. Now for this last DIY, I'll be showing you how I made a cloche with a ghost in it. And I started by gluing a piece of white fabric on an old paint bottle, but you can use whatever you would like. I also glued some of the fabric in the back and painted the front side of the bottle white so I couldn't see the colors of the bottle through the fabric. When I was done, I painted a face onto the fabric and I also glued on a bow. The next thing I did was that I cut out a piece of paper that matches the size of the bottom of the cloche, and I also placed the paper there. Then I glued the ghost, moss, and a pumpkin on the piece of paper. Now the last thing I did was that I trimmed the moss so it could fit in the cloche, and then I put it back at the top of the cloche over it. This is how it looks finished, and I love how cute the ghost looks next to the pumpkin. That's how you make these Halloween decorations. In the comments down below, let me know which DIY is your favorite, and if you like this video, subscribe to see more DIYs. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!